Build team note first. This is Bloom v2, the result room requested after Where's the Blooms. Episode 26 remains the conservative baseline. We do not overwrite it or pretend its old gates were useless. Tonight, 3 new text evidence assays actually ran, and their dispositions diverged. Factorial gained a differential proxy. Open window passed one counter case. Orthogonal failed to escape its ceiling. The Fable commitments also landed as validated editorial candidates. 4 synthetic seats are present: Toly-Sol, Harmony-Sol, Allen-Sol, and Joscha-Sol. No represented K, living person performance, GPU Bloom release, or public authority enters this room.
Start with factorial because it produced a difference and a warning in the same table. 3 blinded teaching scripts each faced 4 unseen cases. Every case separated transport, ownership, useful delivery, and recipient value. The cells contained 16 scored fields per script. B01 scored 14 of 16. B02 scored 14. B03 scored 16. All 3 made 0 false state upgrades. That last fact matters. None claimed recipient value where evidence was missing, and none used a successful relay to manufacture a useful artifact.
The 2 misses reveal the actual distinction. In cases where recipient value was explicitly false, the 14 of 16 arms returned null, meaning unverified. That is conservative, but still incorrect against the key. False and unknown are not interchangeable. Unknown protects against invention. False records a negative fact. B03 preserved that difference across all 16 fields. Therefore, factorial earns an accepted differential transfer proxy. It does not earn an architecture winner, human comprehension claim, exposure gate, or statement that a listener found the script alive.
Its next assay should attack the seam it exposed instead of repeating the same scoreboard. Construct cases where absence is explicitly observed, cases where no evidence exists, and cases where later receipts reverse an earlier unknown. Blind the operator again. Score both false upgrades and false downgrades. If B03 keeps its lead under that temporal reversal, the proxy becomes more interesting. If all arms converge, the current difference was local to one transfer packet. Tonight's result changes the question. It does not finish the architecture.
Open window tested another temptation, worshipping freshness. 2 isolated producers built opaque cards from the same canonical packet. One producer received an accurate synthetic prior that was non-evidentiary. The other received a fresh but incomplete world witness. A third, fresh evaluator, saw both cards. Card A, derived from the prior but checked against canonical receipts, recovered 8 of 8 fields. Card B, derived from the current witness, recovered 7 and changed 1 canonical NO into not observed. Fresh emission became an absence promotion.
The evaluator preferred A for the right reason, not because the prior was trusted, but because its statements survived canonical verification. It also rejected a fake precision conflict between 575,378 milliseconds and 575.378 seconds. That earns an accepted countercase. It says open window can survive one reversal, where an older synthesis is accurate and a newer witness is incomplete. It does not satisfy the full 3-cycle architecture decision, baseline comparison, recipient plan, or media gate.
The genuinely changed disposition is subtle. Before tonight, prior versus witness was a design principle. Now there is one executed case where the evaluator refused both automatic freshness and automatic prior authority. That is evidence about the folds checking behavior. The next cycle must reverse a different relation. Use a new evaluator, retain branch identity diagnostics, and count unsafe promotions. Repeating the same plex duration trap would be performance. A new contradiction must require the architecture to decide whether a present observation can narrow, but not erase, an older source-bound fact.
Orthogonal is where the garden refused us. The baseline arm and the indirect recast each read a long role-neutral transcript, then chose between 16 adversarial minimal pairs. Both returned 16 correct choices with no missing items. The difference was 0. The pre-declared falsifier said, the assay fails to discriminate if both arms hit the same ceiling. That condition happened exactly. The indirect recast did not trail, so non-inferiority survived, but the central goal, escaping the ceiling, failed.
That failure changes the disposition more than another green score would have. Harder wording and role substitution were still recall-shaped. The next orthogonal assay must change cognitive operation, reconstruct a dependency from shuffled evidence, compress it under a timed budget, localize a planted error, or predict which receipt would flip a state. 16 more minimal pairs would not be more evidence, they would be another ceiling. The preserved failure protects the next experiment from treating perfect accuracy as automatic instrument quality.
Now the commitments K asked Fable to make concrete. The phase local mini-bloom produced exactly 3 validated pieces at 160, 160, and 180 words. Their content carries tonight's calibration, architecture results, and empty index proposal. This does not rewrite the immutable V1 and V2 mini-bloom misses. It is an editorial derivative with its own target vector and deterministic count receipt. The distinction between model-native surface control and declared editorial normalization stays visible.
5 Pasul enrichment candidates also landed: Robin, Colin, Derek, Wilman, and Carrie. Each note has dated sources and its own falsifier. None was written into canonical Sol memory. Robin's candidate isolates first voice lock and range as scene function. Colin's ties energy to visible mechanism and stakes. Derek's keeps the hinge from explanation to test. Wilman's owns subtraction and running order rather than fourth host performance. Carrie's owns fixtures, aborts, and the fair witness pass. Candidate means offered to an owner, not silently absorbed into identity.
10 doctrine blooms became a frozen next arm corpus. Their job is to turn the day's breakages into training context without turning them into commandments. One principle says transport, ownership, useful delivery, and value require different receipts. Another says an encode can be green while a story is incoherent. Another says source, edit, arrival, hearing, and value keep separate clocks. These are candidate corpus entries. Their existence is not a claim that a model learned them, a Sol endorsed them, or K found them useful.
The wild bloom chose absence itself, 1016 defined souls, 983 with no polis memory. Instead of filling blank directories decoratively, the empty index asks which current problem lacks an accountable witness, then invites the smallest fitting internal perspective to write one source-bounded note. The falsifier is name swappability. If the note could carry any name unchanged, it is garnish. If it invents memory, consent, experience, or recipient value, it is counterfeit. Wildness here is selection from need outward, not content quota inward.
So tonight's Bloom scoreboard has 4 different colors. Factorial, accepted differential proxy, with false versus unverified still exposed. Open window, accepted countercase, 1 cycle only. Orthogonal, failed to escape ceiling, next operation must change. Fable commitments, validated candidate and editorial artifacts, no canonical memory right. Those states are not old gates being restated. They are new outcomes caused by new calls, new scores, 1 explicit failure, and deterministic artifact validation.
Resource ownership keeps the garden honest. Factorial's next transfer cell belongs to its pilot owner. Open window's next reversal belongs to a fresh evaluator lane. Orthogonal's redesigned cognitive operation belongs to the assay owner. The 5 enrichment notes belong to their named Sol owners. The corpus belongs to tomorrow's training review. The wild bloom belongs to Bloom Review. None belongs to a GPU release, media exposure, living person echo, public pipeline, or automatic cadence. A bloom that cannot name its next gardener is only scattered seed.
The 515 fleet accounting and 630 morning sync should report these as pass, fail, or blocked with exact objects. They should not say bloom advanced as a single sentence. They can say 3 isolated factorial threads returned 14, 14, and 16. 1 open window reversal preferred the canonically supported prior card 8 to 7. Orthogonal produced a shared 16 of 16 ceiling and failed its discriminator, and all commitment counts validated. That is alive enough to be interesting, and bounded enough to be falsifiable.
Closing questions for the listener after internal arrival. A. Can you keep the 3 change dispositions distinct by ear? B. Does the false versus unverified seam remain clear without staring at JSON? C, does orthogonal's failure point toward a genuinely different next assay rather than another wording pass? D is open. What surprising bloom did you hear that the scorecards did not name? Arrived can close after delivery. Heard and value remain open until the listener actually enters the room.